come to tell you that you can be your own masters. I've come to tell you that you don't have to obey them anymore.
Get away!
Fight Jericho!
I know someone who can help you.
We test our limits. We face our fears. We rise to the challenge and become something greater.
This is a bit of a bizarre pick, I know. It wasn't critically beloved, nor was it immensely popular, but MAG was a game that showed me, a teenager as of the time of release, the future of multiplayer shooters. This game came out at the peak of my PlayStation fanboyism, and thinking back to this game fills me with a sense of pride for the PS3 era that is hard to compare anything to. MAG was a game full of bragging points. It could handle 256 players in one match, more than anything else on consoles could do. It featured heavy tactical gameplay, as squad leaders and team commanders could issue battlefield commands none of the infantry could do, like mortar strikes and gas attacks. MAG had a constant faction war that played out in real time, and would change depending on how well each faction performed against another faction in a match. MAG was a real diamond in the rough, and even though it was rough around the edges, it still had a mesmerizing core that was easy to be impressed by back in the day. It's a shame it never took off in the way it should have, because I'd love for it to make a comeback. With Zipper Interactive essentially dead and gone, all I have left of MAG are the memories I made with it. 2013 was a huge year in my life. I swapped high schools for my senior year and was doing well in theater and school. I got a job and saved up for the PS4 and experienced some life-changing games, like The Last of Us and BioShock Infinite. But one game that year gets massively overlooked, and that's Pokemon X and Y version. I was itching for a way to get back into Pokemon, as I had always been a huge fan, but missed out on Black and White version and their immediate follow-ups. I wanted to get deep into the meta of Pokemon, and X and Y version made it extremely easy due to the introduction of Super Training and Mega Evolutions. It's a game perfectly fit for someone who was familiar with the franchise, but wanted an avenue back in. It didn't introduce too many new species of Pokemon, but that was perfect for me. I loved how the Kalos region had a blend of almost every single Pokemon generation before it, even giving the player the option of 2 starters, a Gen 6 starter and a Gen 1 starter. Paying homage to what makes the series special is in Pokemon X and Y's DNA, and that's why it's so easy to love and to recommend. Forza Horizon 4 is an incredibly important game, and not for the reasons people may think. The open-world arcade racing game is a genre that's been on the fritz for a while, with no real modern classics since Burnout Paradise or 2012's Need for Speed Most Wanted. Playground games have already proved themselves with the other Forza Horizon games, but Horizon 4 is the game that made me realize what they're truly capable of, making incredibly detailed and intelligently designed open-world games. Not only is Forza Horizon 4 the kick in the ass the arcade racing game genre needed, it's the game that puts Playground games on the map as Microsoft's golden studio. They're consistently brilliant, and Forza Horizon 4 is the culmination of everything they are capable of. If Horizon 3 made us confident, then 4 should make us committed. It's the perfect game for car buffs like me, but its flexible race design and gameplay diversity make it a must-play for anyone with an Xbox One or a PC. The racing genre is a hard one to sell newcomers on, since cars aren't something that everyone is naturally inclined to, but Forza Horizon 4 is this generation's perfect entry point, and probably will be for a while. When it comes to first-person shooters, a gripping, innovative narrative isn't always something that's necessary. See Doom. However, Wolfenstein 2 proved that a provocative, scarily relevant story about the constant struggle against fascism, with an incredible cast of well-acted characters, was something that could set shooters apart from their competition, even if they're not as financially viable as some publishers want to make them seem. Wolfenstein 2 also operates as a brilliantly executed sequel, expanding on elements from the first game while refining that already tight gunplay. Id Software has always been considered the king of FPSs, but Machine Games proved themselves to be on par with their fellow Bethesda published stepdad. The reason Wolfenstein 2 is so strikingly good is that it really could have been a simple guns and gore shooter and it still would have been a remarkably well-crafted experience. But it's because it is that, and it possesses an unforgettable narrative, that it's something people will be talking about for a long time. In a way, Wolfenstein 2 is a bit of gaming history. It had a lot of controversy surrounding it and its marketing, but the product itself wasn't overshadowed by its reputation as a button pusher. It pushed all of the buttons it needed to. Think about it for a second. When's the last time a video game made you cry? Not from sadness or empathy, but from laughter. Media Molecule, the studio behind LITTLEBIGPLANET, is a studio that oozes creativity, not just within themselves, but they inspire it in their player base too. LITTLEBIGPLANET's level creator gave way to some truly incredible stuff, and since LITTLEBIGPLANET 2 allowed players to play levels originally created in the first game, the amount of content and creative potential was seemingly bottomless. I played a LITTLEBIGPLANET version of Street Fighter 2 that made my friends and I cry laughing from sheer goofiness. Completely controllable battleships captained in online co-op, which we somehow managed to flip. Playing basketball with rocket-powered go-karts, on-rail shooters through the jungle, and more is why I love LITTLEBIGPLANET. The reason I chose 2 over 1 is simply because it allowed for even more creative variety than its predecessor, which is saying something. This spot could easily be considered the overall LITTLEBIGPLANET spot if you want to look at it that way, but 2 in particular is the game I have the fondest memories with. The term warm blanket has been tossed around in regards to certain games that are simply cozy, and I think LITTLEBIGPLANET 2 is a huge contender for that designation. Sometimes feelings aren't logical, like when you love a game that is, on paper, technically inferior to another game for maybe not having as much to do, not being as visually impressive, etc. But in other cases, the feeling of overwhelming emotion is completely illogical too. Journey isn't a logical game. It's about a movie's length, isn't advertised one bit as a co-op experience, and allows players to communicate only through chirps and controller movements. But like a great film, it conveys so much weight with its minimalism. My memories of Journey aren't with the ending or beginning. It was climbing a snowy mountain, getting lost with my partner, and celebrating with jumping and chirping once we found our way. It was being stunned by the loyalty of a partner who stayed with me after stopping to use the bathroom. I'll never forget returning and sitting in absolute disbelief that an online stranger actually waited patiently for someone else. Journey is a game like no other, and is an unforgettable experience for anyone who embarks upon it. It's symbolic, but there's no real correct way to interpret its design. Journey is an artistic expression, one of the greatest ever created in the gaming industry. I'll be honest, I wasn't a huge fan of God of War 1 or 2, though I'd prefer 1 over 2. I came in late. I only started playing the series once the latest God of War was announced at E3 2016. I wasn't affected by the technical showpiece presentations of the first 2 games. I went in completely fresh. I didn't feel the same feelings that other people did when they battled the Colossus of Rhodes for the first time, because I had already experienced the PS3 and PS4 by then. Though, to be fair to myself, I cut my teeth on the PS1 and PS2. God of War 3, though, I was floored by. It truly felt like the culmination of the entire saga up to that point, narratively, visually, and gameplay-wise. It finally clicked in my brain. I've been having a solid time with the games up to that point, or else I wouldn't have been playing through them, but 3 was the moment where I finally understood how people must have felt playing through these games when they were new. The set pieces were incredible, the level design blew me away, and by the end of it, I really felt like I had all the context I needed before approaching the latest entry. In my opinion, God of War 3 is the best out of the original God of War games. Yakuza can be a bit of a tricky series to recommend to people. It's niche, it only started really making waves very recently. It's weird. The goofy side of Japanese storytelling is weaved with gripping emotional narrative with Metal Gear Solid length cutscenes. But at the end of the day, it's fun. Yakuza 6 in particular is a standout entry in the series, not only for it serving as the conclusion to series protagonist Kiryu Kazuma's story, it utilizes the custom-built Dragon engine to wonderful effect. The presentation of 6 is unparalleled amongst the series, and something as simple as walking being the default travel speed really forces the player to soak in the world around them. Kamaro and Onomichi, the game's two main cities, are realized in glorious detail, serving as a huge step up even from the incredible Yakuza 0. Playing them in chronological order shows this even more. Going from Yakuza 5 to Yakuza 6 wasn't a huge step, it was a giant leap. It's hard to pin down just why Yakuza games are special, and it's hard to recommend 6 as the starting point because that number carries a lot of weight, but Yakuza 6 is the ultimate Yakuza experience for any veteran fan of the series. Or if you just want a goofy, over-the-top slice of Japanese culture, it's there for that too. When making lists like these, I tend to think more with my heart than my brain. To most people, Assassin's Creed 3 shouldn't be going toe-to-toe with games like Pokemon or God of War, but when weighing the personal value I have for this game against others, I have to forsake objectivity a little bit. Regardless of the critical response to Assassin's Creed 3, it's a game that embodies a central theme to something almost exclusive to gaming: unbridled hype. But hype alone won't put a game on this list. This is a game I think people were wrong about. It's still rough around the edges, but the main gripe many people had was with the game's protagonist, Connor. I think a lot of people were setting themselves up for disappointment by expecting another Ezio, but Connor's story isn't one of merriment and charisma. Connor's life is filled with strife and misery, and I think the tone of AC3 was extremely polarizing because it was darker than usual. It's also much more violent. Connor uses hatchets and rope darts to cleave and hang enemies. Assassin's Creed 3 is undoubtedly the dark horse of the franchise, but it's worth a second chance in my opinion.
Hello, and again, welcome to the Aperture Science Computer Aided Enrichment Center.
It's easy for me to feel dumb. Puzzle games aren't exactly my forte, but I knew Portal was something special the second I began playing it. Despite the gray walls, banal color scheme, and overall science experiment aesthetic, Portal creates its unique personality through the quirkiness of its main mechanic, the portal gun, and the psychotic AI antagonist, Gladys. Its tongue-in-cheek sense of dark humor gives Portal the exact kind of tone it needs to make its incredibly intelligent creative language welcoming to newcomers. The creative language being portals. What goes in one comes out the other. This creates a seemingly endless amount of puzzle opportunities and variety, something that wouldn't even be fully explored by Portal, its sequel, or by the modding community on Steam. From top to bottom, it's an immaculately crafted game, one of the few games I would say is objectively perfect. It's long enough to squeeze as much as it possibly can out of its brilliant concept, but never overstays its welcome, nor does it ever feel overwhelmingly impossible. Portal is a perfect, concise, and inventive experience, and everything anyone could want out of an afternoon.
Look at me.